Hello, my good friends. Welcome to the show. Jack Chow, your host on G&E TV with the East West Show. Bad news. Of course, very bad news. We know a big guy, almost as big as a star, Mr. Hoffman. Philip Seymour Hoffman died of drug abuse. So far, the discovery says about it as how he died exactly by what amount of drug abuse. That's different stories they're gonna find out. So looks to me this show though, it rings the bell. It rings the bell to people. Is there a rise on the drug abuse problems, or why should it happen? Or what happened to this poor guy, though? Joining me is my good friend at my invitation as the second show of the new year, the brand new Year of a Horse. Mr. Peter Choi, a good friend of mine, a commentator and a live promoter. So welcome to my show.
Well, thank you, Jack. This is a serious subject. I would like to wish you Happy Year of the Horse. There's a little irony there because the street name for heroin is horse. So this is a sad irony.
Very sad, very sad, very sad. So what exactly, just a rough comment about this guy's passing away.
Well, first, as you said, he was a great actor.
A great actor,
and that is the great loss. He was one of the great actors of our current day. He won the Academy Award for playing Truman Capote. And, even for that role, Philip Seymour Hoffman was a big, bear-like guy. Truman Capote was a small, elfin, epicene literary figure, and yet he convincingly portrayed him, won the Academy Award for Best Actor, had been nominated for the Oscar several other times, and had given great performances. He had acknowledged in a 60 Minutes interview in the past that as a young man, he had taken drugs, he had enjoyed drugs, but he had been off drugs for the past few decades.
Yeah, he quit quite a bit, right? Yeah,
he was now a
very,
father.
very young, early age. Right.
Yes, and he was a father. He had 3 kids. The mother and the kids were at a playground a block and a half away. He was supposed to pick up the kids for that day, but he didn't show up. So his wife called one of his assistants and said, "Where is he? He's supposed to be here." The assistant went into the apartment and then found him there with a needle in his arm, with some heroin there,
and some leftovers,
called the police.
Leftovers on the
yes.
side. Yeah.
He had, I believe that he had, besides the bag or 2 of heroin that he was shooting himself with, injecting himself with, he also had, I think, a couple of dozen in supply. And that's something we can talk about, by the way.
Exactly.
It's called being able to insulate yourself. And so then the police came, and then the news broke, and everybody heard about it. The first thing I wanted to mention was that it breaks the stereotype. People might have been surprised to know that,
everybody
he was
is surprised.
a drug addict, that he was addicted to heroin. It seems like a drug from the 1970s or something like that. You hear a lot about crack, methamphetamine, but you don't. But actually, just in the past few months, Corey Monteith, who was the star of Glee, the young man, he died in a Vancouver hotel room. Heroin.
Yeah, same thing.
There was a group from the 80s called Criss Cross. There were these 2 young kids. They wore their clothes backwards. They had a great song. Everybody say, anyway, that young man also died of heroin. So it's not a standalone. These are people. The thing that ties them together, they all died alone. And that's the thing about heroin. I think that, and we can talk about this later, is that when people do heroin, they tend to do it privately and alone because there's a stigma in society. They don't want people to know. And I think one of the things that can come out of this is if you know people who do heroin, you need to maintain contact with them and try to get them to get help and not to walk away. That is a big part of it. Also, Philip Seymour Hoffman, people like that who have money, they're able to insulate themselves. So a lot of times people think heroin addicts are drug addicts in a bad part of town, injecting themselves in their eyeballs, trying to get their drugs, robbing people to get money. That may be so. But there are also many, many upscale people who on the surface may look like you and me, professors, doctors, government officials, famous Oscar-winning actors who do heroin.
They do that behind doors.
They do it behind doors, and yet they're able to function. Look, Philip Seymour Hoffman was an actor who learned pages of dialogue and had to act on film. But there are many people who are able to insulate themselves and not go out on the street and be a junkie on the street, but able to do it in their Vancouver hotel room, in their house. So I think it breaks the myth and makes people realize that it is much more prevalent.
And you know, Peter, to look at the whole picture, of course, his passing away, well, this story happens to such a guy, we feel at a loss because we all love him. He's a really great actor. Well, it rings bells. It rings all the vigilance about this problem, which we have for centuries, right? Now, my question is that why such thing seems to be happening more in the entertainment circle.
Well, I don't think that is just entertainment circle. You see, because famous people, we read about them in People magazine, they're celebrities. But you have to look back and realize that there are people like the mayor of Toronto. He was smoking crack, you know, and also there was the Mayor Marion Barry of Washington, D.C., caught in a hotel room smoking crack. But they don't get the attention because they're not on People magazine. They're not celebrities. When it happens to celebrities, people feel like they know them because they've seen their movies, they've been on their TV in their living room. They feel like they know those people. Politicians like the mayor of Toronto or the former mayor of Washington, D.C., they're just elected officials.
So you're saying that it is not only a problem to the circle, specifically to the circle of entertainment industry. It's a more kind of an overall problem.
That is right. It is growing. Look, in 2010 was the last survey by the Drug Enforcement Agency. The amount of heroin deaths doubled from 3,000, you know, up. And then between 2000 and 2012, the number of people using heroin doubled from 373,000 to 700,000. Heroin used to come in from Mexico. Mexico ships a lot of drugs over the border. Not Mexico, the country, but drug peddlers in Mexico, I should say, used to come into California. Now it goes into New York, and it is spreading over the northeast seaboard. And so it's a huge rise. And in fact, the Vermont governor, in his last State of the State address, devoted the entire speech to the heroin epidemic in Vermont, in his state. The whole State of the State speech from the Vermont governor, his last one, was devoted to one subject, the rise of the heroin epidemic. So that tells you how big it is. These things we don't really hear about. Sometimes, sadly, it takes the death of somebody famous to bring attention to that subject. Yeah,
exactly. And right now, with Hoffman's death, probably it's time we talk about it.
Because it's such a great loss. Everybody loved his performances. That we don't get to enjoy that anymore. That's a great loss. And so I think that's one of the sad silver
lining. How old was he when he passed away?
He was about 43.
See, so still young.
That's right.
Still young, still young.
Corey Monteith, the star of Glee, was 31 years old. And so that is the thing. I think the main thing though is that people have to realize that when it comes to heroin addicts, I have had friends who were heroin addicts. I know people who are still going day by day, no longer doing heroin. I'm sure many people know individuals like that. And if I have any regret is that I had friends back in the 80s who were doing heroin. At that time, I felt that I wanted to tell them, look, I need to not be around you because until you get rid of this habit, it's not healthy for me to be around you. But in retrospect, I really regret that because I think that if you know someone who is struggling with drug addiction, don't cut them off, but be there for them.
Yeah, intervene for some
That's
help.
right.
Yeah,
You know, they need treatment and support, not punishment and going to prison. And they need you to be there. That's why I mentioned that so many of these famous celebrities that you hear who died of heroin overdose, they died alone. This is not a drug you do with friends and everybody. You might, but it's something people do generally because heroin helps take care of pain. It's emotional pain, general
like
sadness,
a morphine, right?
even physical pain. Exactly,
yeah, it's like morphine, right?
People take it for pain, and in fact, a big rise of heroin today is because, I mean, for instance, Rush Limbaugh, he was in the news, and because he had an OxyContin prescription, you know, problem. And the thing about oxycodone, one pill is $30. But a bag of heroin on the street you can get for $6. So for one $30 oxycodone, you can get 6 bags of heroin, 6 times the use. It's cheaper. That's why it's growing in popularity.
I see.
And I believe that it may be coming out that Philip Seymour Hoffman, who had been clean for some time, had taken some painkillers for a medical problem that he had. And
so we don't know what kind of medical problem he has.
We don't,
right?
but the thing that does happen, perhaps to him, but certainly to others, is that you start with legal painkiller prescription pills, and they're not enough. You can't get enough
and
pills.
You went on.
So you can get it cheaper by doing heroin and getting that kind of pain medication.
Okay. Let's take a very short moment now. When we come back, we'll find out from the passing away of Mr. Hoffman, what shall we learn? What can we learn? What do we have to learn afterwards, if there is any positive element in this? So we'll be right back.